or on mixcloud.com/Omega DJ. And you can check us out live on the YouTube channel, The Doctor Surgery. If you go to YouTube, in the search bar in YouTube, you type in The Doctor Surgery, THE space Doctors, DOCTORS space Surgery, SURGERY. And then when you get your results, you go to the filter button or the refine button, whichever the tab is known as, and you go to type, and on the type you select channels, and that should change the results and give you immediately a different set of results. Will be right at the top, The Doctor's Surgery. You just click onto that one and subscribe. Follow The Doctor's Surgery. So whenever we're doing a live broadcast, that will pop up in your your notifications to say that we're going live.
Click the bell. Click the bell.
Yeah, click the bell for notifications, right? And you can be, always an active part of the show, listening and watching with us. So for those who are tuning in for the first time, welcome to The Doctor's Surgery. What we're going to be talking about today, well, we've got a few things that have been taking place over the past week. The ones that are up for discussion. Ooh. The first one really is the issue in relation to the booing. For those who don't know, the footballer Demba Ba felt aggrieved. He was pointed out due to the color of his skin inappropriately by a Romanian official in the European Champions League, or one of those football competitions, where he was aggrieved by the term that the official had used, and that set alight various discussions across various platforms, and I'm sure that it's been discussed by numerous others over the week. So I'm just going to really touch on that briefly in terms of the actual discussion about it. But I wanted to open a wider discussion in relation to the general support mechanisms that have been in place as a result of that, with how the feedback came and the support mechanisms came in relation to that. So for those who don't know, if you're not aware, the Romanian officials used the term negru to describe Demba Ba, and if you listen to the recordings, you could hear the footballer, the black footballer, complaining that why is it that when it's in relation to his white colleagues, the official would say that guy, it's that guy, it's that guy, and whenever it's in relation to him, it's the black guy. Because I think they were explaining that the term negro is in relation to just how the official was highlighting the point of black, as opposed to negro in terms of the derogatory N word that we know is so synonymous with racism. And the question raged across all the different airwaves for a few days. It raged. A lot, and that is coming in light of the booing as well. Sorry, I've conflated two things. The booing in terms of the Millwall Football Club taking the knee, and the booing taking place with that. So I want to discuss both in brief, but in a longer context and a wider context. When we look at the Denver bar situation, as I've started with, what you start to get a lot of radio personalities asking the question, and this was what I realized is, and this is where I say that we have to be mindful of the nuances that take place within the media, that take place within the context of this society, when people are either when people are subtly belittling certain aspects of things. So when we listen to the likes of LBC, Nick Ferrari's show, and others, you hear people talking, even within our own community, and we listen to various presenters talking about the issue at hand. The question seemed to boil down to the point of, what else are you supposed to call a black person apart from a black person? No one looked at the context of things, and I think the key question, the core question that was continuously asked across the airwaves was, well, what else was the guy meant to say? Especially, that was the narrative being pushed, the nuance being pushed, and that became the debate. No one seemed to ask the question, well, why is it that the question is being asked, what else is meant to call a black person, why is it that when there is one black person and 6 white people?
Don't they have numbers?
So these are the officials. They're not players. These are the it's more intricate than that. When we're looking at 6 white people and 1 black person, they're saying it's the easiest way to describe the black person as black, because they're the one that stand out because of their color. But in reality, if you have 6 white guys, and we have to use color by definition of the example now, my question would be, well, what would he call the different white guys to identify them? Because it would be harder to identify the individualized white guys, because there's 6 of them, so he couldn't essentially say, right, the white guy, right, because he'd be referring to 6. So he would have to be more specific in relation to the description of the white guy. And this was Demba Ba's point. And this is the point that everyone seemed to have missed in their discussion. He had it quite calm and easy to go that guy, because it made those scenarios identifiably easy in the outset, obviously, because there wasn't a complaint by anyone being misidentified or misrepresented. So it is a measure of innate prejudice. It's a measure of underlying prejudice. Whether it's intent to cause offense is another story, is another point to be looked at. So the issue isn't whether, what do you call a black guy? Shouldn't you call a black guy a black guy? The measure is, we support Demba Ba in understanding the impact of the disparaging comment that was made against him as an individual, where he, in that situation, felt aggrieved, and he expressed and explained himself quite eloquently and simply so. But everyone ignored it. Everyone ignored the point he was making. Every single presenter queried and presented that Demba Ba took offense because of the term Negro, because it sounded like the N-word, as opposed to Demba Ba recognizing the nuance to say, there's 6 white guys, and you're able to identify each of those white guys quite easily. by simply saying that guy and pointing them out. But when it comes to him, rather than saying that guy as well and pointing him out, you hyphenated, you exclamated, you highlighted, whatever word you want to use to kind of bring the point home, the color of the man's skin. And that is where the issue is. It wasn't necessary to highlight the color of his skin, because it wasn't necessary to highlight anything apart from pointing out the individual with the 6 other white guys, because it was quite easy. So the hardest person if we're going by simple definitions, people will say, well, the hardest person to recognize would be one of the white guys, right? You'd have to find creative ways to explain one of the white guys. But a simple explanation is that white guy. Or, sorry, let me rephrase that. A simple explanation is that guy, when it comes to one of those white guys, was easy enough to identify one of 6. You didn't have to say, oh, it was one of the white guys, third from the left. If it was that way inclined, according to what Demba Ba was saying when we listened to the debate, it sounded like if it was that way inclined, then there would have been a motive, a narrative for it's so easy when it's now the black guy, you go, it's the black guy. But it's the nuance, the underlying narrative of what was being looked at that everyone seemed to have missed. And now the debate has become, what other way can you describe a black person apart from saying a black person? And the whole message and narrative is lost. Why? Because the presenters that have the power of the mic and the power of the listening public introduced this nuance and made it seem as if white approaches and white viewpoints on how we perceive things is priority to us seeing things that way, because we're hypersensitive. That has become the inner hidden message, that there's a level of hypersensitivity to black folks, and and they used to do this back in the 90s. If anyone remember, they used to call it the race card, right? Whenever you get prejudicial treatment from the police or white members of the public, and it ended up in a scenario, especially in the courtrooms, they would turn around to say, you're using the race card. So it was a way of people back then in the 90s and the noughties, they were afraid to say, yo, this policeman was racist, because it was you had to find the right way of breaking down and explaining how this policeman was racist, because it was taken literally that racism only existed at that time if you were using the word like black whatever, or N-words, or a darkie, or a derogatory name. Only it was taken in the context that it was racism only if it was said with a derogatory name. And so it became this clear struggle that if someone was dealing with you in a certain way, but not using, and this was a psychology at the time, someone was dealing with you in a prejudicial and biased way, you can't say it was due to your race because they didn't use a derogatory word in their stance on behavior. These were the subtle nuances that were introduced at those times, and people were pushed into the corner of not being able to highlight these things in the courtrooms because they would say you're using the race card. And so people were scared to highlight these factors. It took a certain level of eloquence in these courtroom battles to first understand how you're going to present these arguments and then say it was because of, or present the options of it being prejudicial based on what factors. You literally had to go through it systematically. And these little subtle nuances still exist even till present in a lot of court cases, because I haven't heard the term race card in a long time. I don't know if it's still a term that they try to draw, the judiciary tries to pull out every so often to try to quell what they might deem frivolous accusations or libelous accusations. Because so we have to, and this is why I feel the importance of the show is to kind of highlight to our youngsters, highlight into the greater white population. It's about first creating that clear explanation. I could be wrong. This is why this is a debate, right? First creating that clear explanation, what took place and the treatment received. And then you introduce the factor of what would have been the motivation behind the person presenting that treatment. This is the same thing in schools. Schools would have certain prejudicial behaviors towards students, but again, when it's highlighted that there's racism, the first thing they look for is, was there a derogatory term used? So the narrative changes, and we allow this narrative to change. We allow this narrative to change because it's like a sidewall. We're not looking at what is the reasoning why they've introduced this narrative in such way, because they've already looked at how to tackle these problems. And the moment that these problems come up, the first thing they start to do is bring out their little tick box mechanisms to find that loophole. They're not looking at, well, let's establish whether this narrative is correct or not. They're looking at it to say, well, we're establishing that we have a procedure and policies and regulations in place. Let's tick these boxes to see if it fits that. Oh, it doesn't, because these words weren't used. So it becomes an always uphill battle to avoid these nuanced escape clauses that have been put in to the justice system, or what they call the just us system, right? So we have to look at these things, and we have to understand that when one of our own goes through something, we listen to what one of our own is saying and not what the presenters around it are saying. And because the presenters around it, they have only one course in one course of action in place to quell any kind of public what's the word, misperception that could lead to or perception, misperception or perception, because I need to put both in, that could lead to any form of disorder. So when you listen, so it's about maintaining control, maintaining the turning other cheek, the calming of the people. And it just rang home again in the Demba Ba situation when he's explaining quite clearly, listen, you got 6 other guys, they're all white. You didn't even need to use any, he didn't say, if the guy was saying the white guy with the beard, or the white guy with the gray hair, the white guy, if certain descriptives were used to pick out one of those white guys, you could understand, because they're all white. And it'll be harder to pick out one white person from 6 than it is to pick out one black person from 7. from one. Sorry. So the descriptives should really have been emphasized more for the white group, because there are 6 of them, than for the black person because there's 1. And the only reason why that 1 will jump out is because innately or underlying that complexion is playing a significant factor in the thought process behind. Whether it's just an unconscious bias or whether it's a conscious bias, it is a bias nonetheless. And that is what was detected. Whether it was meant to cause offense or whether it wasn't meant to cause offense, that's what was detected. And we as a people, we're so in tune to prejudicial behavior that we're so in tune to it that we've chosen not to verbalize it for so many years that it becomes hard to verbalize it and explain it in its detail of what's taking place. And then you got these presenters that have spent years or decades honing their craft, just belittling those that find it difficult to explain. And then so on these shows, on these talk shows, when you listen to them, you'll have 20 callers. And you'll be lucky of those 20 callers if you get 1 that eloquently does so in terms of explaining. And then you've got these half-wits and idiots and sellouts, whichever one they fall into each category, that would call in and try to, for lack of a better word, kiss ass. Suck up. Play the yes, master, I understand what you're saying game, because they want to show intelligence, right? So they hone into the nuance argument and saying, well, based on what you're saying is right, what else can you call a black guy? And this is one of the reasons, and I'm going to say a few political things, I guess. This is one of the reasons why as much as I love my brothers and sisters out there, I've always said that, the representatives of us as a people in terms of spokesperson, it should always come from someone that's in a neutral situation. If you're in a biased situation, as if you're in a mixed relationship, I'm going to say, you cannot be a spokesperson at these points because you are compromised. And I'm not saying it in a disparaging way that you've done something wrong in life, because who you're with and as in your happiness, that's fine. But it still points to the fact that you're compromised, and you will be compromised in your views on the situation. And if you're in a relationship, I can't expect you to go full out and give a detailed breakdown of where prejudices lie, because you could be in your home in that situation where certain prejudices are said and you brush it aside because you think, or the person loves you, but they've come up with these nuances and you've seen the way around them so that you have an amicable home, because you see that those little things are just misperceptions. And these things do take place, where misperceptions because of racial misunderstandings do occur. And it's easier being in that situation to identify those factors than if you're not. But what it does, it then makes someone in that situation vulnerable to speaking out of turn when the situation is not as such. So I say that to even lead into further, because one of the people that were quoted in the media over the past week as saying, what else should you call a black person but a black person, was John Barnes. I have no idea how and when John Barnes turned a spokesperson for black folks. John Barnes was a figure that was well respected, and I still respect, as a person that went through the mill as a sports person that went through difficulties, but yet represented and make us look and say, go on, Johnny. You get what I'm saying? But in this, when it boils down to the crunch, is personal choices are his personal choices. And the moment that him start talk to we about certain things, I'm going to say, Johnny, but you're compromised. You can't talk to we in those senses. That's not your remit. We understand that you've gone through these difficulties. We understand that that you may have a point, but your point in this, if it's not supportive of your of your brother, in the sense of understanding the nuance of his argument, and you've created a narrative to undermine him, not being present at that situation there, is playing that role of you it's inappropriate in every sense of the word. And his comments are fueled when you start, as any spokesperson for any scenario, the first thing is you know what, my brother has gone through something and he's made a complaint, let's listen to what he has to say. That should be the first port of call for anyone that's saying they're a spokesperson, or once you're taking that mic and you're speaking out, you're a spokesperson, right? And if you're not doing that, you're undermining the whole process. The issue of stop and search, whenever it comes up, you always get these idiots that call in on these radio shows that say, well, they've never been stopped and searched. Who cares if you've never been stopped and searched? The fact of the matter is, there's an issue recorded of the police doing certain measures in terms of their discrimination when they do certain stop and search towards certain groups. It's not a question if it's happening or not. It's recorded as such. So if you've never been stopped and searched, great, get on with it. You know, if you can't offer an explanation as in terms of, listen, I've never been stopped and searched, but I know it's happening because it's recorded as such. I guess the reason why I've never been, this is the approach I've taken. If it helps anyone, then I hope that, you know, it will help to, you know, make us get there in a more safer way. Then granted, offer it in that sense. But a lot of times when people come up and they start saying these things, it's always in a disparaging way, like those who are getting stopped and searched are deservedly so, they must have a certain image, they must, as if the image of someone should make them a second-class citizen, as opposed to their actions and behavior leading to these issues, leading to these concerns. How someone dresses and where someone lives or they're from shouldn't be a measure of whether they're a first or a second-class citizen according to this society. So to go back to the Demba Ba situation, he was quite right in what he was saying. And the argument, I'm not going to entertain the argument about what else should we call a black person apart from a black person. What do you mean? Whatever you got 7 officials and you describe that official number 1 as that guy, official number 2 as that guy, all the way through to number 6 as that guy, and then when it comes to the black one, you go the black one. Yo, firebomb. It's all of them is that guy, because that's the official. You know, that one, point him out, spend it, give the same common courtesy to all as you give to the from 1 to 7. We need to always make sure that when we stand up to push to recognize that whilst we are not the ones in that situation, we've been in situations that have been compromising ourselves. So we have to better acknowledge and understand. And whenever someone that's been drinking the champagne at the table for too long start to forget themselves, we have to pull them up on it. You know, and we have to say, yo, you're compromised. Even if you're with your own and you're in a situation where you stand a lot to lose and you start to talk certain things, you're compromised. Compromisation doesn't necessarily come because you're with someone else. So there's a lot of people that are compromised. They come out and they say certain things from a compromised situation because of where they are in their lives and everything. This is the way that I see it in that sense. And it's a measure of first, no, you know what, if you're going to use the adjective to describe that man, and you didn't use a similar type of adjective, race-based adjective for the rest, there's a case to be answered. Simple as that. And there's nothing else more to it than that. What else should you call a black man apart from a black man? When it's a situation where you're going to call a white man, a black man, an Indian man, if because they're all in that situation where that adjective is necessary for the purpose of description or identification, but in the situation of where the footballers, he wasn't using the white one or white man number 3 or all that stuff. He was just going for, like I said, that underlying thought. If it was someone in a wheelchair, would they call the guy in the wheelchair or something like that? They go that one. People are delicate with certain things, but when it comes to a black person and their skin color, that delicacy goes out the window. That delicacy goes out the window. So we have to look at it as such. So when you start getting people start coming out and explain and trying to explain a narrative and trying to undermine the other man, it just sounds like a lackey. And so we have to kind of be mindful of these things. When we look at the other situation of the booing at is it Millwall Football Club, a lot of people have been going on about how the booing at Millwall Football Club has been the booing at Millwall Club, a lot of people have seen it as something that has been what's the word, white privilege, and in the sense of white people losing their privileges, and they feel that there shouldn't be politics in football when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I've listened to a lot of these people that are linked to people that have booed, calling in these radio shows and say, well, if it's freedom of expression, and then even some people saying even black people booed, but those black people booing comes back to the whole point of the whole John Barnes situation, because what John Barnes said about Denver Boy is akin to John Barnes booing in the same sense, So when we look at the booing, the take a knee, the black, and I think this point has been explained eloquently by many others. Black Lives Matter, the movement is different from keeping in public opinion through a recognized action a message of racism will not be tolerated. And taking the knee is that message of racism will not be tolerated, or a reminder that there is deep racism out there in society, that and until that is gone, that reminder should always be there in some context or capacity, whether it's taking a knee or whatever is brought forward in the future to keep it to the forefront, that people push towards positive change, whether they want to call it Black Lives Matter or whatever they want to call it. Like I said a long time ago, if you listen to any of my past shows, I've said that we have to hijack the Black Lives Matter movement. So if we're going to hijack it and we're going to take the knee and we're going to use it to highlight certain issues, as in within this football match, but to be quite frank, Millwall, when I heard that they booed at Millwall, it was like, well, it's Millwall. And I know Millwall might be going, oh, we're not associated with racism no more, but Millwall, come on. Millwall and those football clubs were synonymous with the most racist of the racists in this society, in the football society back in the day, as with a lot of football clubs, but those clubs were loud and present. You know what I mean? So I'm surprised that Millwall got black supporters, if that's the case. You know what I'm saying? Millwall, it's Millwall. You know what I mean? I'm not surprised. I don't like football. I don't watch football much, really. So a lot might have changed. I don't know. But the whole football thing, as I used to know it, one of the reasons I don't like it was just always the hooliganism, innit? And Millwall was famous for having racist hooligans. I'm going to say it. Rago. Old school talk. Right. So that's my first point. If you got anything you want to add or expand on that, let me know what you think. I'm not going to keep ranting. The number is 0753 996 8143. I'll give that number again, 0753 996 8143. One last time for the money, 0753 996 8143. We need to essentially avoid the nuanced narrative that when they try to distract away from the purity of what was being said, which Demba Ba in the recording explained quite clearly, you know, and where his grievance came in was quite clear. But so why are we discussing what else should we call a black man apart from a black man? You know, why are we discussing that? Why is that a topic of debate? You know, we have to stop letting these radio personalities such as these Nick Ferraris and these guys distract, and these idiots like John Barnes distract away from what the purity of the message was. All these others were identified in this way. Why is it that my skin color came into the mix in this scenario? You know, you could have just pointed me out like the rest of them. You know, that guy, that's what you said about him. That guy, that's what you said about him. So why couldn't you just say that guy about me? It's simple as that. And he couldn't give an explanation. That was the point. And don't tell me that Negro means black. I know what it means. I hear it in so much different contexts. That's what Demba Ba was saying. Don't tell me that Negro means black. You said about this white guy, that guy. And this about this white guy, you went that guy. So why with me, you go that black guy? And then again, and we don't even know how the emphasis was on that. Also, text message reads, "Greetings, Doc Surgery. Who's more witch-like, Priti Patel or self-hating Afrophobic Kemi Badenoch, MP? All in the Mind, Tuesday, 15th December, 9 p.m. tonight on Radio 4 as a feature on the experiences of racism in childhood and how it impacts on mental health in adulthood. Paul Joseph Watson on YouTube, although a racist, is an interesting alt-right-wing social commentator, bigly so. Hashtag free Mubarak Bala Dondia in Kaduna, Borno State, Nigeria. Rise up to Konum, Harun and them, Hotep, or Bisi Basi." I'm well, me follow some of it. I don't know who I'm trying to think who Paul Joseph Watson. I don't know who he is, but you say he's alt-right, so I probably won't listen to him. 642, big up yourself. You know, who's I guess the key question there, who I don't know the other MP. But from the sounds of it, it sounds like it's a comparative analysis, isn't it, in terms of what's being said right now? But you know, who's more witch like? I think Preeti Patel just looks like a witch in it, full stop. So I'll go with Preeti, but I don't know about the I don't like Preeti Patel if you know, if you realize. The self-hating Afrophobic Kemi, you know, this is the problem for a lot of these MPs. You know, a lot of them are self-hating, but can we blame the MPs for being self-hating when so much of us are also self-hating? You know, self-hate is something that, like you say, you know, racism in childhood has a significant impact on your life as an adult. And when we look at it's difficult for me to kind of fully grasp the impact of what racism in childhood has done, because I grew up in a predominantly black country. So I think, if anything, colorism is closer in nature to it. But when we look at even with Jamaicans, old school Jamaicans, you know, and there was there's a clip going around, and I had to laugh when I see it because it reminded me so much of even close family members, where they're talking about the Beckford family, and that the Beckford family was they were praising their white ancestry. You know, people that's black as they, talking about their white ancestry and how proud they are to be related to the slave master, and how they proud they are of the name. And it just it just shows you how much a black person goes through in those colonial settings, even though it's a predominantly black country, that they're so proud of um, of a white ancestry that doesn't even recognize them as human beings. You know, that's what they cling on to. So you can imagine the ruling class, the upper echelon of society in those countries, where they have even greater house Negro links to slavery, how proud they are to these systems. And you can tell because these colonial systems, these countries, they're proud of their colonial past, and that royal tie. You know, this is all they sing about all day. You know what I mean? About how even when you see the soldiers marching and everything looks not Afrocentric. So even in those black countries, yes, we you do have like that impact, but it's a different type of impact. Whilst they're proud and they say they're black and proud and so forth, at least you get that in it. But in this country, you don't really get self images on TV. Growing up, for those people, they didn't really have a lot of great positive role models growing up on TV. Whereas in those black countries, you might have that conflated view, but at least you got those positive images right around, because that's all you could get. And in schools, the teachers looked like you, and they were pushing for greatness, even if the mindset was that white is right. They were still pushing for greatness. Whereas when you go to schools in this country, you'll be fortunate, as I have been in some situations, and unfortunate in others, to get you'd be fortunate to get a teacher, a white teacher, that is just about academia and want to push you. I have had a few of those, you know, that white teachers that are about academia, and they push you. And then you got white teachers that all they want to do is to denigrate you and tear you down, you know. And I had plenty of those too. And the system doesn't protect against that. So I guess for those people that grew up all their lives in such a system, the mental impact would be quite detrimental. I mean, what would you say that's been on your part? Because obviously you kind of grew up within that system. How would you say it has shaped your development?
What teachers?
Teachers, the system, the society, the racism experience, the prejudices, the lack of positive role models, just how how do you feel it shaped yourself and perhaps the younger audience your age?
I think when I was younger, I wasn't necessarily aware of racism, so I wasn't looking at any sort of behavior or prejudice as being racist. So I never really took into account how a teacher was acting towards me. I just thought it was a case that instead of my race, it was maybe my learning capabilities or another factor. But as I look back now, and I look back at my experiences and the experience of other Black people at the same school, it was very much a case of prejudice against race. So I guess it shaped me in a sense of I understand the subtle nuances of which people use to, what's the word I'm looking for? Dismiss you, rather than the overt.
Right, and this is where we'll go back to my original opening point about the subtlety of these things, where everyone's gotten smart to things. Racism hasn't disappeared. Racism has just gotten smart, and prejudices and in how prejudice someone's outwardly behavior becomes. You know, I know you got something to present. I'll give you that time soon.
That's right.
So let me see if I can get through my next point before I take a step back and over to the producer to kind of give her point that she wanted to kind of highlight this week. So one of the things, you know, leading on from that, you know, one of the things that we have to kind of have a greater understanding towards and be mindful of is our cultural standards and maintaining a way of life. Because when it comes to cultural standards, I think that each generation that we have in this country, we go so much more away from a core of who we are. I think that maintaining a way of life and being proud of yourself is getting far more difficult, because the true nature of our beings isn't being taught. One of the things that a youngster once said to me, it was that, you know, you had Asians with their cultural celebrations, and you had white folks with theirs to some degree, and but what was ours? And these little things, they play a great part, because we, in every sense of and shape of life, we run away from our cultural standards. A friend of mine got married recently, and they jumped the broom, and I was like, why would you jump the broom? That's a slavery thing. But I kind of respected that, because at least it's being proud of them. Morning, Ade. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I just wanted to ask a quick question of what your thoughts are about that incident that happened last week in Tottenham.
In where, sorry?
In Tottenham, the young lad that was brutalized by the police.
You know, that's not been brought to my attention, unfortunately. I haven't heard about it. Go on, give me some background on it.
Okay. When you guys get a chance, producer, just for the only place I showed the video, it was circulating on social media where a young lad was arrested, he was in handcuffs. And out of the blue, the police had a gun in his head, drag him on the ground. You know, it wasn't right to see, but it wasn't putting up any kind of physical resistance. So there was a protest that occurred last week, right, where it turned out was a political, you know. So there's not being talked about as also, you know, because a lot of people still don't know about it. So if you guys get a bit of chance, producer, check out the Black Lives Matter website, Twitter. That's where I showed the video. Unless you know somebody else that's got it on their WhatsApp or Instagram or something, I can share it with you.
It is so interesting that these news giants and media outlets, they suppress these true information, isn't it?
You know, it's a business thing, you know, because anybody that watches that, then when you now find out that the chap is there, the young boy is actually 16 years old, he's in handcuffs, there's not, you know, putting up any kind of resistance, they're punching the head, and it's not even a small punch, you know, that's why when you look to see the video. So, yeah, if you get a child, have a look at that, maybe you can sort of throw that into discussion as well.
Well, you know, if it was my child, you know what I mean, and an officer punch up my child like that, you know, me have to go punch up back whoever punch up my child. You get me? I don't business. But I think in this country, we're so pacified that people don't retaliate in kind to whatever they experience. I mean, it will always happen. You know, these things will always happen if someone thinks they can get away with it. Bear with me 1 second, Ade. I'm going to hand you over to the producer.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at the video now.
Do my best.
Just having a quick look.
So this is the actual video itself.
Yeah, I'm just trying to bring it up now.
Okay, if you, what I searched for was the young boy police brutality charge, man, 16-year-old boy. Black Lives Matter UK, they had that video that we on Thursday last week. So you can find their Twitter feed, just scroll down, and you know, after Thursday, the video should still be on there.
Oh, okay. So what was the premise of it? Was he just getting a stop and search, or?
Yeah, it's the thing. We're trying to get a bit more information as to what actually, you know, called for the arrest. But when the video only shows that he's standing there, is in handcuffs. The policeman who's arrested him just started punching his head. There was no resistance. He wasn't screaming, shouting at them. I didn't see him spit on them. But the kind of punch, you know, that he gave, the guy could have easily had brain damage. If you see the size of the officers as well, and the intensity of the punch, you know, for somebody who's in handcuffs, who is not resisting arrest, who is also a young boy, 16 years old, and then getting dragged to the floor.
Yeah, it's despicable. It's despicable.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. I've just brought up an article on Daily Mail. Just says that the 16 it's given like screenshots of the video, and from what I can see of it, looks distressing.
It is distressing.
Did you? I don't think you lot realized the mic wasn't on, right?
No.
You two were having a conversation by yourself. I apologize, London. There was a bit of dead space there. They didn't realize the mic wasn't on, so they were having a conversation without you guys. Someone should have called it. Oh, you couldn't even call in and say, Ade, shame on you, man. Okay, no worries. I'm going to have a look at that, even though I don't really support that website. That web video should have been shared.
I think it's the second posting of the Black Lives Matter UK. Unless you can find the video on YouTube or somewhere else, but so far that's the only because I've seen it publicly anyway.
Okay, and that's a shame though, because you know these videos should be bouncing everywhere. You know what I mean? If that's the case of what's taking place.
Exactly.
You know, so yeah.
There was another kidnapping in a school in Nigeria.
Okay.
This was, as of yesterday morning, there was apparently over 300 students that were missing. Now, they're saying that it wasn't done by Islamic extremists, it was done by bandits who were trying to basically want the ransom. They want money for each of the children that they're going to release. So, it is a very worrying thing, you know, in our community or the global scale that such actions still takes place. You know, there was a lot of parents that were very worried. The woman there now, both her brother and her son missing. There was people whose daughters and sons missing. So, yeah, it's something that the international community, you know, is not talking about in the way that it ought to. Because that kind of behavior should not be allowed, should not be celebrated symbol, you know?
Yeah, but even so, you know, amongst us as a people, you know what I mean, and the authorities out there, we need to be able to keep our homes in check as well. we shouldn't really always having to be relying on the international community to say Nigeria, you need to do this, or well, you know what I'm saying? We
We're absolutely have to keep the pressure on the government over there, because at the end of the day, it's a failure of them for such things to be happening under their watch.
but this is what I mean, you know, when we look at we can look at the politics of Nigeria in greater depth, you know, on another show. But what I'm saying is, like, do we always need to rely on the white West or Europe to correct our, you know, ills? Shouldn't these things be an automatic process? Shouldn't we be really the example?
When I say international community, first and foremost, the African Union. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. The African, that's a better, yeah. Let's be specific. The African Union should be talking up, and if anything, then the international media and press should be saying the African Union is putting pressure on Nigeria, as opposed to be it being Britain and the US or wherever putting pressure on Nigeria. Yeah, so I do agree with that. You know, we have to take that responsibility of our own. But remember, this is where one of the things I mentioned earlier in terms of us as a people and cultural standings. You know, you have to look at the impact that take place in Black countries. A lot of these are tribal, and the reason why you don't get those reactions is usually it's a tribal factor, and one of the, that's the
Check this out. See, in the case of this particular incident after Nigeria a few days ago, it is not tribal, because the people who done it are from the same region, okay? Up north in the country. So it's not a tribal thing whereby it's just decided not, you know, another tribe's, you know, children from their school.
No, but it could be tribal in the sense that because they might be viewed as being on the side of the government doesn't want to it's like if a Don's running a garrison area in Jamaica, right, and they belong to the ruling party, the ruling party is less wanting to go in and investigate certain things that Don shit does. Do you get what I'm saying? So it could still be, even though it's inner fighting, it's still tribal in the sense of what reactions is garnered. Does that make sense?
So,
there you go.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there's, you know, I personally suspect on the terms of religious fanatics, right?
Yeah, there you go.
They say that that's not them, that they just landed so we're taking the children for ransom.
No, but more than probably as well. But this, there you go. It's like everything. When you dig into the true depths of it, you wouldn't be surprised to find that probably someone that is supportive of the presidency and the president doesn't want to go after their support group or the support base. You know, it could be anything. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying there's always more to the eye. But the people that should be correcting that, it should be done internally or through the African nations. And we have to kind of start taking the drive, or even the diaspora. You know, people like yourself here start to petition in the government through the embassy here and so forth, and putting pressure in that way. You know, we have to take responsibility for ourselves. You know, so yeah.
You know, that kind of a thing only aspect of it, because to me, I think it's the height of callousness. You know,
right.
If you understand the whole concept of being your brother's keeper, you know, why would you want to go and take your brother, kidnap your brother's child when you're from their school and then ask them for money for ransom? I mean,
exactly.
That's just crazy. That's people's children. You know, there's certain lines that you don't cross. That kind of a thing. Have you not seen the video? I think it's the height.
If I've seen the what? Sorry.
That video I was thinking about.
I don't know if the producers found it. But I haven't been able to check because I'm actually broadcasting live on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll leave it with you. You know, so even if you don't chat about it this week, maybe next week. You know, I think more people need to see it basically, because that's the only way things can get done about it.
You know? All right, no worries. All right, give thanks today. If you want to take part in the show, the number is 0753 9968143. I'll give it again, 0753 996. You know, these are things that we need to start to police ourselves and be our own news stations within the network of things. You know, so we we have to kind of always be pushing these things. The information that Ade is given is quite essential in terms of that 16-year-old over there in Tottenham. I haven't heard about it simply because it's been pushed and suppressed. So we need to, make sure that everything is spread like wildfire. Just like how they keep pushing this COVID narrative. We know that now they're talking about a second strain and all this stuff. We have to make sure that we stay ahead of everything and, stay good, people. So as I was talking about, cultural standards and maintaining a way of life, one of the things that can be noted in terms of the generational gap, as they keep highlighting, I'm going to use their terms, is that within these generational gap, with every generation, Black people are losing identity and adopting more and more white standards and ethics within each generational gap. And that becomes dangerous because sometimes you hear a Black person speaks and you can't even tell if they're Black. You know what I'm saying? In terms of, it's not about the phrasing of the terms and stuff, it's just their value system is completely out of whack, and a lack of and a disconnect with any form of commonality. That's something that I wanted to highlight. One of the things that you see heavily within the Black community, and I'm not pointing my finger or saying anything is negative or wrong in any sense, but it's something that I have to highlight, is that you get a lot of odd or people acting, Black men acting very effeminized to fit in society. That's something that's, again, profound, and you can see within a generational gap. And so you have to wonder if all these things, is it a consistent attack on the young Black mind? So you get two types of Black guys, coming up within the society. You either get those that are seen as rebellious and nonconformist, or you get those that are extremely effeminate and are far more accepted. So it's like there's a reward towards people that are effeminized in their behavior. So you have to wonder, is this akin to modern slavery? And what do I mean by that? You have historic slavery is how can I explain it? Historic slavery is like you have where people have that Toby syndrome, where you had in Kunta Kinte, in Roots, you had Kunta Kinte being beaten to the point where he called himself Toby. So people, this modern slavery is like people are being abused towards having that new Toby syndrome, the men becoming extremely effeminized, and those that don't fall into that effeminization, then they are abused within the criminal justice system. Nonconformist gangs, they kicked out from schools and so forth, and that kind of the rise of that behavior. These are things that we have to be, mindful about and keep our eyes on. And we have to start, like I'm saying, being proud of ourselves, start to do things for ourselves, because without that pride, it won't take place. But as you know, it's a current affairs show, and I want to hand over to the producer, because she's also got a point that she wants to kind of have a discussion about. So let's go. So adjust your mic. Everything. You ready?
I think so.
You're all yours.
Thank you. So the story that I wanted to bring is basically about a girl that's died recently due to circumstances which the court has ruled as an accident. And basically what I wanted to bring up this week was often the case is we never really prepare ourselves as in the Black community, prepare ourselves for situations that might arise. So often the case is we get to a circumstance or a difficulty and we've never prepared for it, or we've never been taught teachings of how to deal with it. We always get to then and think, how do we cope with it, rather than what's the saying, prevention is better than cause. So the story is, her name is Sharik Adi, and she is a schoolgirl from Manchester area who drowned. Apparently it's reported that she drowned, where there were 5 kids that went to a river and said that they were playing in the river, of which Sharik couldn't swim and she came into difficulties and then drowned. However, when you look at the police report, when you look at all the different accounts, nothing really aligns.
Nothing really aligns.
Nothing really aligns. So I thought, let me go in and do a bit more digging. Let's see what exactly can we find, or what can we learn from the situation.
So this is the second young person that in recent times that's died through some form of drowning, in a scenario where they're in a rural area in this country and suffering from prejudices. These are the common points. Rural area, abuse, suffering from abuse in school, racial abuse, and from other students, youngsters, and then all of a sudden has a friendship network of which wasn't there before, and all of a sudden go to an area where there's a river, and all of a sudden they're the ones that end up in the water and drown, and they were attempted to be saved by these white guys that were white fellow friends that were there, but yet none of those people were their friends as far as society knows,
or their family.
So how did they get to the river and all these things? We interviewed quite a few. It sounds like it's another major cover-up to protect young white Britain, right? Okay, so carry on.
So I said, let me do some digging, let me have a look, because it was always portrayed that it was nothing racially based and it was an accident. So I said, let me do some digging. The school that she went to, her mother said that she attended the school several times because her daughter complained of severe bullying. But because the mother's English...
What's the name of the school?
The name of the school was... Read one second. It is Broad Oak High School, but I think it got renamed as Hazel... Let me check that. Hazel...
So why did they rename the school? Because of the scenario?
Under special measures. So there was 2 situations. One where a teacher committed suicide due to being bullied by other staff members. And then you had Sharik.
And was this teacher...
I couldn't find out the race or the...
So that's all a bit of a haze.
Excuse the pun. Yeah. So I said, let me have a look at the school. The school went into special measures. It's predominantly, this is from the Ofsted report, predominantly a white school. And I can bring up the numbers. Out of a school which has about 700 students, 500 students are white. The next big major racial group is Pakistani, which is 119. And then the blacks, or all of the blacks, you have like 7 that are Caribbean, 4 that are African, and 2 which identify as black, but of different origins. So you already see there's a major disparity between race and how they might associate and perceive with race. The other factor which I looked into was, again, the people that were handling the case, like the paramedics which showed up, the police officers that came.
Yeah.
I tried to have a look at who was dealing with it in court, and yet again they were of white ethnicity. So I don't understand how they could necessarily talk on the racial element that could be perceived in that case and yet dismiss it if they've never had to really deal with race. So it's a bit convoluted as well in regards to the statements of which the children gave, because there's 5 kids, of which all 5 kids have given different accounts of how the situation happened or how the death happened. What seems to be consistent is child 1, because of the age of the children, they can't give the names. Child 1 was the perpetrator of Shareek's death. In regards to child 1 gave an account saying that they were in the river, and Shareek went in there on her own accord because she thought she could swim. She felt they were swimming together, but once she left Shareek to go swim with the other kids or go to the other kids, she came in a bit of difficulties, of which then it was too late to go and save Shareek. However, child 2 and child 3 gave a different account and said that Shareek was swimming by herself or grabbed the leg of child 1, of which child 1 then pushed her, and then she came into difficulties from the push because because child 1 wasn't a good enough swimmer. So she was preserving herself because Shareek was trying to, like, I guess, keep herself afloat, and she couldn't swim for both of them. So it's just too many discrepancies in the story. There's too many errors where, like, the paramedics come along and said that everyone was dry, and they were thinking, how could they have gone to save Shareek if everyone was dry? Too many errors, too many discrepancies where it's just highlighting the disparities of which Black people are facing in the court system and in life. Does anyone have a comment or suggestion or want to talk about the issues? The number is 0753996843. One more time, 0753996843. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the Doctor's Surgery. If you type in the search button, the Doctor's Surgery, then refine under channels, it should be the top option, and please subscribe. But those are the topics that we will be speaking about today. Does anyone have anything to comment on? No?
Okay. So where did you get to with that? Sorry, I have to take that phone call.
I gave the whole background of the kids,
Mhm.
how their stories didn't add up,
Mhm.
how the paramedic came along and said that all the kids were dry, and she couldn't understand how, if their account of they went to go save Shareek, how it could be the case if all of them were dry.
So the whole thing, the whole scenario, for those who are listening, you know, we're talking about what's the name of the young lady again?
Shareek Abdi.
Shareek Abdi, a young Somalian girl that came to the UK via the refugee program. She was born in a refugee camp in Kenya, and then brought to the UK with her mother. They were placed up there in the north, I think, up in Bury. And as a result, she was complaining to her mother that she was going through a lot of bullying, and she ended up unfortunately dying as a result of so-called an accident, because of she was hanging out with her bullies. Like I said, this sounds so similar in context to a young man that died. We done the interview this year in the summer, and sorry, I haven't got the name to hand. Kasib, I can't remember, but it's just becoming a common theme. It's like a mirror reflection, and the whole criminal justice system, is poised to, whenever a young black person dies at the hand of young white youngsters, either I think the police even ruled in the last one to say that the young man that may be at the responsible end had a promising future. So it was like, well, it doesn't matter, kill the young black chap, but he's got a promising future. So this is what we're getting in this country. So people need to kind of wake up. People think that the UK is no longer racist or anything like that, or the police isn't racist. We know the police are racist, as an institution and as the individuals. I'm not going to say it no different, because, and you may have white police officers that aren't racist in the police, but we know that you got a lot of police officers in the police, even black ones, that act funny towards their own, suffering from that mental issue. And then you got a few good officers, a few. I probably won't put it past that much, a few. So we have to look at it in the sense of, in this scenario where it seems to be like a concerted effort from all grounds, where a young mother now is without her child, without no true support mechanism behind her, and a language barrier. It's astounding, some of the things that this society gets away with, things that that are impactful. And we shouldn't just look and say, oh, well, she's a young Somalian girl. It doesn't matter. It's the whole ethos that whilst you see her as a Somalian, and whilst you see them as a Nigerian, and once you see this person as that and that person as that, they just see you as black. And the approach is diabolical. The result is what it is. So we have to, in turn, protest these things.
I guess what the sad thing is the very thing that she was running from, she ran into. She was like trying to protect her family.
And this is the thing. This is why, those in the home countries, they have to start building their countries and stop trying to run away to the land of milk and honey. We are in such a state, as I highlighted earlier, our cultural standings is so eroded. It's not just a measure of money anymore. Once upon a time, it was a case of let's get some money in, and we do something with it. But then you have, and don't get it twisted, I just have to say it as it is. You have so many people that make the money that can help to develop the home countries, the community, and whatever, but they take that money and they give it back to where they got it. If we look at the historic figures, the recent historic figures that have, in essence, gone against the grain in so many senses. If we look at the Americans, we look at, I don't even want to call the name because it's so bad. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, Doc, that's me. Again, I just wanted to
Tell the presenter. Tell the
Hello, sorry. Yes.
Regarding people running away or coming to the land of milk and honey.
Yes.
Okay?
Mhm.
Well, the thing, most people, if they had a choice,
Mhm.
they would not have been here.
Mhm.
And so instead of blaming the people that have been here, you have to look at why that most people come over here.
Mhm.
It's not because of the economics, and also it's not because of Australian leadership back home.
Mhm.
Okay? Look at what's happening in Ethiopia. How many refugees have been created because of bad leadership?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's the point. That's the point I wanted to make.
So is the point in regards to saying that it's a case where it's escaping, or I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure the point that you're making.
Yeah, if given the choice, most people would not leave their homelands unless they have to.
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of blaming them for not coming to the land of the country, in most cases, because of bad leadership, they've had to escape certain things. For example, look at what is happening in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
How many refugees have been created in the past few weeks because of this whole thing with the government against spraying people.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay?
Okay. Fair enough.
So now, instead of them ending up in the Western countries and stuff like you can't blame them. Because
Yeah.
they escaped with what is effectively targeting their homeland.
Mhm. But in this scenario, it was a case where she's fled a country to protect her family. However, she's
Yeah.
come to England, and in some ways, it's kind of destroyed her family in that same
Yeah.
aspect of why she's fleeing.
Yes. And that's what's most sad about it.
Mm.
Because, it's like, you leave a situation that is unsafe for you and your family, and you put in another situation that is also unsafe for your family in a different way.
Mhm.
And this happens to so many people.
Mhm.
You see, so we as a people, there's a lot that we need to ensure that amongst ourselves. First and foremost.
Mhm.
So this whole issue, because obviously they had a long civil war last year in the West Islamic protests and stuff like that. That is like a cancer in Africa. It's affecting society in Africa.
Mhm.
And we definitely want to actually do something about it.
So how are you saying that we would tackle this situation? Is it a case where we stay put or we move?
Eventually we're going to have to move, right? And eventually, unless we actually put a build our place off of us, if people go in there, then they're going to start moving.
Mhm.
Okay?
Mhm.
So there needs to be a consensus and then be involved and taking interest in what is going on over there. Well, things like this Islamic insurgency, it should be zero tolerance of it. It's also settlement. And even if you fight them, also on an ideological basis as well. The same thing that they're doing is to justify their action. Still, when it's on the issues, condemn them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's no point to stand up.
Yeah. I understand that point, and I think I agree with that point as well. It's just very difficult to judge how you would deal, because it's, as you said, your home country is in turmoil, and then you travel to somewhere that's not in turmoil, but yet put yourself in the same amount of danger. Like, if you stayed in your home country, how would you deal with the turmoil? How would you try and overturn the discrepancies in your homeland?
The only way you can do that is by coming together and solidarity. Always remember something. The power is in the hands and always has been in the hands of the people. But they don't know that. They don't know how to mobilize themselves. You can't have a few people at the top, you need to start running things the way they do. They only do that because they are aware of the mass that ignorant of the power that's in their hands. They people stand up together and say, look, people were sick of this kind of leadership. We don't want you anymore. What are we going to do?
So building the community.
What are we going to do? There's so many times you can set to rescue people. After a while, the people themselves are going to turn against you.
Definitely. I agree with that. I agree. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye. Does anyone have anything to add? Then the number is 075 3996 8143. Again, 0753 996 8143. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's The Doctor's Surgery. If you type in the search button at the top, The Doctor's Surgery, then filter by channels, it should be the first one. Please subscribe. We have a couple of text messages. They read, there's a lot coming through. Says, rise up to, oh, I can't read that. There's too many words for me. Let me read this one. It says, Babylon subtly evil keep us away from doing great things. They are teeth in our breakdance. So I think what the gist of it is that we need to sort out our community and learn how to cooperate with each other and take back some of our strength of which we've given to people. But yes, please call 0753 996 8143. 0753 996 8143. Do you disagree or agree with any of the comments made? What are your remarks in regards to the show? Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is The Doctor's Surgery, of which if you type into the search button, The Doctor's Surgery, and refine by channels, we will be at the top. Please subscribe. Does anyone have any comments or remarks that they want to make? Anything? No? I'm going to put it on an early break, so see you in about 10, 15 minutes. Thank you.